is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to episode 20 of Sunday Morning Conversation, where we talk to business owners and content creators in the trading card and collectible card gaming space. If you want to be on a future episode of Sunday Morning Conversation, feel free to email me in the description below or on Instagram. We have a very special guest today, someone who, admittedly, I have run around the ringer trying to get on. First, I was an absolutely horrible host, completely forgetting I even scheduled him. Then today, my building almost burned to the ground. But now we're here, and I'm excited to talk to him. It is Mike with MIkeXCollectibles. Mike, how are we doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that your building is still in one piece.
Yeah, me too. There's too much work has gone into everything behind here.
Yeah,
I don't want it
right.
to, you know. But before we get,
you gotta move it quick.
yeah. Before we get started, if you want to give a little introduction of who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike, and I own and operate MIkeXCollectibles, which is my online TCG and rip and ship store that I've been working on for the past year and a half. And I primarily do live rip and ships on YouTube and Twitch. Is kind of where I'm at. So
Nice.
yeah, but good to be on.
Yeah, thank you. So what got you into wanting to go down the rip and ship side of things first? Because obviously between me and a lot of the people I've had on, we've kind of more gone down the bulk road. I know upfront cost can be a pretty big barrier if you want to run a proper rip and ship, at least proper to nowadays standards. What got you starting on that avenue first? And I'd like to hear kind of where that kind of originated.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like to rip cards open, right? Who doesn't like to rip packs? So I think when I started getting back into collecting, which is like early 2024, I was getting into this whole online, like live selling and buying products, which lots of people were doing rip and ships at the time. And I thought it was such an interesting concept. It's now we're going to more digital world where really you could purchase anything through just through the internet versus trying to find product in person. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool concept. So I joined a few rips here and there, and I was like, this is like very like this is maybe something that I could do better, because there were certain areas where I had pain points at where I was like, this is not really how I would do things on a rip, for example. But really, the reason behind the rip and ships was because I think most people forget. A lot of people do investing. Talk about investing, keeping things sealed. A lot of people do bulk. There's different types of portions of business, but in essence, to me, these cards were made to be opened. Right, the people who are selling Pokemon, whatever, One Piece or whatever, I think the creators didn't want people just to hold them. For me, it was being able to actually rip things open, and in a way, I do like to take a little bit of a gamble. So I like to, from that perspective, opening stuff was always fun. But getting starting a business that allows you to maybe make some extra cash to actually rip for other people. That was a very new concept for me. I thought, hey, maybe we could do something with that. So I decided to go down that road, because I also had a huge seal collection that I had started with. So that's kind of an excuse to rip all my stuff open as well. So
yeah, I mean, just like any other business, I mean, a lot of times when you start, you kind of go with what you have, your collection, your PC first, and then you kind of go from there. I know we talked about a little bit before we started, but what platforms do you currently stream on, or do you rip and ship on?
So primarily YouTube and Twitch are my platform. So I'm now on Whatnot or TikTok. And strategically, I decided not to do that because of Whatnot fees and TikTok. They always take a portion of the fees. So for me to create something from on a platform that doesn't necessarily doesn't take any fees for any sales, because you're kind of funneling people to your own personal website. That allows me, in my mind, to one, cut out the fees so that I could hopefully get costs down, so I could give people better deals or sell cheaper packs for cheaper than someone on Whatnot or TikTok, because I don't have to worry about those additional fees on top. So that's kind of why I kind of went with that route. But definitely a harder route, because you're starting basically from scratch. You're not in a dedicated space that is primarily meant for people to like already look for rip and ships. So that was definitely a challenge as part of it.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I got back into collecting when COVID started, and maybe it's just because that's when I got back into it, and rip and ships were just starting to become a thing. But I've always
Yeah.
been a fan more of that style and your style of rip and ships, where it's a little more intimate. You know, you got your host, you're kind of just like chatting it up with people. Um, but the challenge is when you're dealing with these other platforms like Whatnot and TikTok, where it's literally just like, you know, just a machine. You're just trying to pump through cards
Yeah.
as fast as possible. The built-in customer base there is hard when you're trying to build your own. So how would you go about with someone maybe trying to start, or even for yourself? How hard has the customer acquisition been? Because when you're trying to do your own thing on your own stream, obviously the biggest barrier is people
Yeah.
coming to you, and if they don't know who you are, there's no way they're gonna buy from you.
Yeah, it is tough because it's like the whole concept of, especially if you're doing something on the side, is building up the brand, right? Because no one knows who you are, right? No one knows. Oh, I'm just a regular guy that beyond the shop, I'm just pretty normal of a person. But like how do I can compete, right, with Whatnot? And I think one of the things is you know um, when you're building up your brand, especially when you don't have like Whatnot or TikTok to push customers, I think one of the hardest points is trying to get a customer base. So a good thing about like YouTube, and also bad thing is that the YouTube algorithm, it could be hurt you or it could be something that pushes against you. But if you are able to get people to kind of join the live streams, then you'll be able to at least have an opportunity to talk to someone, and constantly chatting with someone in the live streams is definitely helpful. Um, but I do think that especially with someone who's new, I think trying things out on YouTube is quite nice, and Twitch, because there's no it's free, right? You could go live and kind of test things out, see who kind of joins the streams, and then once kind of the algorithm does kick in, you start showing up on the live streams to your appropriate audience, then it kind of kicks off from there. But I still struggle with that constantly. Like it's still a grind trying to figure out the algorithm at times. So it's definitely a huge challenge compared to like live streaming on TikTok or Whatnot, because it's already built in algorithm, because you just stream under the category of rip and ship or something like that. So
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily have you say anything bad. I'm not going to say anything bad about those platforms, but obviously, specifically Whatnot, there are a lot of not positive stories
right,
that come out from a lot of the, smaller stuff. I mean, smaller and bigger. I mean, there's a lot of
yeah,
stories that you hear all the time, especially when you watch channels like Rattle Pokemon or wherever, that is you scam this and this and that. And it gives the business and the hobby a bad name, because you have folks like
right,
yourself and plenty of other people I've met over time that do it right, do it the right way. And I think the issue nowadays, especially, is everyone knows that it's a business. And when you have a more intimate setting, it comes off, it just comes off a lot better. Like, I know I'm going into a stream and I'm probably going to spend a few extra dollars on a pack,
right,
but I'm paying for the experience of opening it with people that that it's a communal
right,
experience, just like going to my card store and opening a bunch of packs with my friends. I know that's people who don't get rip and ships. That's usually like the big thing they mention. It's like, well, why would I pay someone $9 a pack when I could open it for $6? What would you say to someone who it maybe is in that camp, or just doesn't quite, maybe spending a little extra money for that? What would you say to them, or anyone who is running into that problem when they are maybe fielding questions in their chat, running a rip and ship, on how to appropriately
yeah,
address that question or concern when
yeah.
it comes to especially prices nowadays?
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely one of those things that I get a lot of comments on, like my shorts. People and we were just commenting the same thing, like, why would anyone want to join in on this or things like that? And I think there's a few aspects to it. One is what lots of people talk about is community. Is the aspect of being part of something, and being able to like see someone get a huge hit and but celebrate with other people. You might have a good amount of people watching at the same time and congratulating you. It's just kind of creating that that family bond, like
Yeah.
that rip, right? As if you're ripping with all your friends. And sometimes, hey, you may not have friends nearby, but you have people virtually, and to a lot of people, that's a huge part of building up a community. And community is an essence of a solid rip and ship because that's what's all really built off of. So people find the community aspect as a very attractive thing. Other thing is convenience. As you mentioned, it's hard to find products nowadays anywhere, right? It's just hard to find anything out in the store. So what's nice about rip and ship is like, well, hey, if someone's live streaming during a certain time and it's late at night and you want to just hop on and rip a pack of Sunday Heroes, or you want to rip a older pack of Sword and Shield like Evolving Skies, you can find a place, a store that like my store, I sell different packs from Sword and Shield, Sun and Moon, all the way to Scarlet Violet, just even the modern stuff. It's available, right? You could just hop on and just get it. It's a convenience factor. So there is kind of that piece of it. But on the other pieces of rip and ships that people don't talk about, we're not just ripping packs. There's also the shipping part, right? So there is so much work that goes into behind the scenes that I've made a few shorts to kind of showcase that. But there is like tons of things you'll do. Now, there's trash, obviously, but you also have to get the product. You have to sleeve things up, keep it protected. You have to ship it out, make sure it gets there to a person. If it's a high value product, you have to make sure you get insurance and ship everything out, and people receive the product. So it's a lot more hands-on of experience because the cards, even though I rip it, you own them, right? So I have to take good care of them and make sure they get to you as well. So there is the other aspect of beyond just ripping. There's the other things that people don't see on stream that's being done behind the scenes that honestly, like, the cost doesn't cover it.
Sure.
And most of the products that you typically get, depending on how the person kind of goes with. But for someone like my shop, typically I still go below wherever market is, regardless of what the product is, just to give people still a better deal. But that's because, again, for me, like, not having to deal with like certain fees, I don't have to upcharge too much so that I have that ability, that room to make. But it's only like maybe a buck or two that I'm charging, a little bit above whatever people may expect things to be. But at the same time, that dollar or two is not going to cover all the hours that's being spent doing all the other work. So I think a huge misconception about people's understand rip and ship is that we're just ripping packs, but no, there's a whole other aspect behind the scenes that takes place that people don't get to see. So
Yeah, and I think another aspect to that too is, and I'm sure there are, breakers out there that are killing it, financially, and I'm sure you're doing fine yourself. But I feel like people think that rip and ship equals large stonks. Like, everyone's just making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and like you just said, especially in times like this when you can't get product. I mean, if you're buying a pack, even if, let's say, everything is at MSRP. You really can't charge it for too much over MSRP because then you're going to be looked like a scalper. So you got to kind of find that right sweet spot. So maybe 20%, maybe over market. So if you have your own store like yourself, your fees might be 5%, 6%, then you're shipping. You're literally probably making like $1 or less per pack, depending on the pack that you're getting. So it turns into a much more of a volume game than a margin game. Maybe, if you don't mind, kind of, not necessarily your pricing model, but maybe kind of go into the conceptions of that, and maybe what you've experienced on how to appropriately price things for anyone who might be wanting to start a rip and ship like myself.
No, it's definitely a good question, because it's the huge question I get a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people may ask, is how do you get a product, right? Especially in more especially nowadays, it's hard to get product. So for me, most of my stuff is through secondary markets. I get a lot of my product through Facebook groups. Actually, a lot of people see they're selling their collections. You buy a percentage, and you're able to kind of get products that way in. And because you're buying at such a larger volume, you're able to get that product in at like maybe 80%. So you have like 20% market to work with, right? But the idea is primarily, like, I don't get anything at MSRP. I wish, and I trust me. I've also applied for online distribution. For every single online distribution that I've applied to, they don't sell to online breakers or online rip and ships or online stores. You have to have a brick and mortar shop. So my pain point has always been trying to find product. And majority of the work that goes behind the scenes, beyond the rip and ship, is finding product. All the hours I'm spending finding stuff. So, but typically my model is trying to get it roughly, if lucky. I mean, nowadays it's even harder, but usually it's about around 80% wherever market is, and so you have 20% to work with. But then I'll probably price it around like if I get a good deal, probably around 90% will market or 95. So still a little bit below market, but just some room to still make some profit. But to your point, it's a volume game. It's purely a volume game. I made a video recently about kind of my first year's performance of the shop, and overall, my sales for the year was about half a million dollars just in sales. But profit is very different from sales. Profit was only 10%. So 90% of the $500,000 is just gone to
Yeah.
like shipping, to inventory, to all this other stuff, right? People don't understand how expensive shipping is, but shipping took over like I think 30 to 40,000 of just of that 500K. So but at the end of the game, real true margins about 10%. But that's also because it's a continuous rotation of product coming through. So even though the numbers look big, reality is it's only really from gross profit standpoint, it's about 10%. But that's typically what I try to be. I still try to be below market, but I do understand most people you're going to see is going to be at a higher, maybe at market or even a little bit above it, because they're going to want to take into account maybe like again different fees that they may occur if they're not doing their own website or anything like that. But beyond that, they're just most people are gonna have maybe a buck or two above market. So if a pack is like I don't know, like $12, they might sell it for 14, something like that. But I try but for me, it's a volume game. So if I price my things cheaper, I could move the products a lot faster, and then I could get through product faster. I could take the cash, invest into new inventory, and keep rotating it through. So for me, it's a huge volume game. Basically.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's why I always kind of once I kind of got a little more versed into kind of learning how they work, that I that's kind of why I always was interested in eventually starting one at some point, because obviously with doing bulk, I mean bulk is the ultimate volume game.
Yes.
Not to say that you can't pick your parts where you grab that one or two products where you can make a solid margin on it. But like anything, if you have a solid base, whether it's bulk, whether it's a plethora of stuff to shop from, even if you're making small margins, margins are margins. I think Rob, I think I referenced him once in everything I do, but I remember he had a saying once where it's like, sales feed the ego, margins feed the family, or something like that.
Right.
Which is true. To go back to your actual stream, one of the things that I like, and this again goes back to me, kind of being a child of the COVID times, is you talk to your chat, and it's not necessarily always like a vertical form content platform where it's constantly getting people to push buttons and click and do this. I mean, you're just talking. There's plenty of times I've gone into a stream and they're just literally just tapping the pen, just like waiting for money to come in. And whether it's a rip and ship or any other kind of stream, gaming, if you're not talking, if you're not being palatable to the audience, it's not going to work out. And especially nowadays, knowing that streaming, you can make money on streaming. And I think a lot of people would have to admit to themselves that they probably wouldn't be streaming. I know I probably wouldn't be streaming or doing content if I didn't know there was potentially maybe a little bit of something else extra on the end. But knowing that is there and that's a possibility, it makes it even more important to make sure that you are personable and that you're talking to people, and that even though you are running a business, that you are there to have a good community or to have a good experience. How important is that for you? And what would you maybe suggest to people out there who may not have a really outgoing personality but really wants to start getting to this, and how important that needs to be as a part of the formula of an overall succeeding rip and ship?
Yeah, I think most of the people who join my streams and who come back is that I want to create a safe space for people to come after a long day of work, to come and just chat and hang out. So lots of times, when I was a kid, I always got in trouble for talking too much. So I didn't realize that talking too much as a kid actually turns into a valuable trait in the future, especially live streaming. Because I've done a few 24-hour live streams, like just by myself, and I've gone and just talked the whole 24 hours. And I've been doing this for a year and a half, and I have a newborn and a 3-year-old now. So They keep me busy, so my energy level is a little bit lower than what it was. But talking the whole time and actually get to know people, right? And the one thing that I mentioned before about earlier on, like one thing I see some people on rips like who were doing it before I was doing it was like people like, so who's gonna come in? Who's gonna buy now, right? Or this and that. But that kind of just turns it off. It becomes a obviously much more business transactional thing. It's like, okay, who's up next? Who wants to go next, right? For me, the essential piece was making it so that people understood that, hey, I want to get to know you. I want to make a personal connection with you, so that when I'm ripping these cards, I'm ripping them not for myself, but they're for you. But now, hey, if I can understand where your collecting goals are, and this is something I always ask when someone's new to the stream, I was like, what's your goal? How long have you been collecting for? Get to know their background. And wherever packs are buying, it's like, what are you chasing for today? Well, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Right. And that's kind of how I come up from my angle, which is I'm trying to build a connection with the person, with the customer, but also honestly just try to build a community and the friendships, And I've met so many cool people, through my streams, and part of their kind of what they like to do sometimes is for people who are like going to work, they tune in on the stream, they just hang out. Lots of people just come in, they don't buy anything, they just hang out, watch the rips, and root for people, putting the hits. It's just truly kind of making that authentic, that organic, wanting to join a stream. And I think by talking, right, having conversation, getting to know one another, again, having people get to know me, that not only helps me get to understand them, but lets people understand where I'm coming from, build trust in me, build trust in the brand, and also kind of what my background is. And so that once you establish that, you can get people to kind of trust your business, trust you in handling thousands of dollars in their kits that they, chase cards that they, trusting you that you're going to ship those cards and they're going to receive it, right, in the condition that was pulled, and trusting you to basically, kind of also entertain them for X number of hours, right? And so for someone who's new, that is a huge piece of it. Now, if you're a little bit shy, that's okay too. Like, for example, like not everyone's always on camera. Like for me, my rips, I'm on camera, right? You see me, I'm talking camera, you see my hands, I've ripped. But some people just do faceless. So, some people, but still have a conversation. But, you don't need to get to know every nitty gritty detail about a person. You just kind of, be like, hey, how's your day? Some people just want to have someone to ask them about their day, how things are going, get to know them a little bit better, and just have that casual conversation, like you're meeting someone at for the first time, right? And then what ends up where you end up finding is that as you build those relations, what I find is that helps people come back. And looking at like last year's numbers, my retention rate for people coming back was about 57%. So more than half of people coming back, and folks who are coming back 3 times or more was about 40%.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and again, not only just a volume game, right? The other aspect is getting people to actually spend and trust you enough to actually spend money on your show, or want to, because there's so many options, right? So many different places they could spend their money at. But if they entrust you and you build that relation, then you have basically a customer for a lifetime, so to say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my goals. But it's just part of the process. Talking is a huge piece of it. You are there to entertain in a certain way, because that is honestly kind of, you're a streamer, right? You're a live streamer. You got to be able to kind of have just a conversation. Again, nothing too deep. You don't have to talk for hours, but you can have some awkward silence. That's totally fine. But the reality is that you're building connections with people, and that's what really drives the community, and also drives the business as well.
Yeah, I know streaming isn't necessarily like customer service, but I would say that there's a large overlap when you think about it. When I even think about my full-time job at a pharmacy, after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, you start seeing the same person all the time. You start addressing them by their name. You don't say, hey, may I have your name? Say, hey, Mike, or hey, Mr. Jones, how are you doing today? And it gives that little bit of a personal touch. Or if you know what they're coming in for, or they have a problem and you fix it automatically. It's all these little nuggets that you may not think there's value in that, but when someone can come into your stream, hey, Mike, how's it going? How's the family? How's Linda?
Yeah.
It just makes you feel like you're welcome. Not only that, but I know this is probably more of a slow burn, but let's say you have an average of 10 or 20 viewers, which is fantastic, right? That's probably more than 80% of the people who stream have. If you're running a rip ship and you have 18 or 20 people in your chat and you only have 2 or 3 people buying from you, algorithmically speaking, you got 20 people in your chat chatting away, doing things, and that all feeds information to the algo. So that's telling, the greater matrix that, you got something going. So just because I know it can be, frustrating to not have people buying from you or whatever, but the more and more people you have in there hanging out, lurking, chatting, whatever, it's good. You just have to, be in it to win it. And, how did you handle that in the beginning? Like, I'm sure when you first started, you probably only had like maybe 2 or 3 viewers. And I think my biggest issue right now, and I've even talked about it in some of my recent videos, is after I work a retail job, the last thing I want to do is talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I can literally sort cards for 12 hours and be by myself. And it's still something I'm working through, but I'm getting better and getting better to the point where I want to stream every day. But knowing how personable you are and how much you are out there, how hard do you have to dig deep to go live on the days that you're supposed to, knowing you probably just want to take the day off?
Yeah, that is that feels like it's something that is, especially like more recently, is it does occur quite often. And the truth of the reality is that again, I do have a full-time job, so I do work 44 hours a week, regular full-time job, on top of having 2 young kids. That really drains a lot. And then having to go, and I would just say this, I don't stream every single day. So one thing I would say is that I have cut back a lot on my streaming. Before, I think when I first started, I started about like 4 or 5 times a week. Now I've cut it down to 3 times a week. So Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays start at 8 p.m. at night, and then going however long I can. But I think, finding that kind of every single time I go onto a stream after a long day of work, I'm like, oh man, I gotta like. First off, there's two aspects of it. One is like I'm tired from a long day, or I'm tired from either having to hang out and run around with my kid because I have a 3-year-old and he climbs all over me, and I have a newborn that just wants to climb all over me like a jungle gym. But after that, it's just like, well, okay, so I got all this product. I got thousands of dollars in product that I need to move. I got money that's in there that needs to roll. So like, it does become kind of a, like, not saying financial is a motivating factor, but like it's an aspect that you kind of, at the point where you're kind of like forced to, like, I have to stream. Like I have to stream more to get the cash flow to reinvest into something new product, right? So sometimes you gotta bite the bullet, and I bite the bullet a lot more nowadays than I used to. I would say in the beginning, streaming was much more of a like, hey, let's see how this goes. Let's let's have a have a good time, right? It's just like I look forward to streaming, in a sense of like, hey, and we're gonna stream for the next few hours, and it was less of my life back then was a little bit less hectic. Now it's just kind of like, oh, long day, long day at work. And then you got to hop on. It's just like, okay, I got to dig deep. I got to do this, because the one thing about streaming, especially on like YouTube, or like something completely independent, right, is that you are the driving factor of what pushes your streams out. So every day you miss, there's 2 things that happens. One, if you're on the YouTube, then it's the algorithm aspect. You're not streaming as much. But number 2 is that, people are going to just spend their money somewhere else, or people might find someone else instead of you. Right. So there's an opportunity cost when you don't stream. So I always kind of keep that in the back of my head, is that, I do want to make sure I do stream to my committed kind of schedule. Sometimes I might push it, like instead of like 8 o'clock, I might push it to 8:30 or 9 o'clock because I need to get more time to prep. But that's fine. But I'm still streaming that day. But one of the hardest parts is kind of, grinding through it. And, once it's kind of like, I don't know if you were ever a nervous test taker. Like I also, before I
A little bit.
Test, I get super nervous. But when I'm actually in it, I'm like, okay, I think I know. I'm doing fine. So when I'm streaming, there's an anxiety that happens a little bit before I stream. But once I'm in it, then I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. Like I got my energy's back up. I got maybe a cup of coffee in me, and I'm like grinding through it. But I think as your streams, depending on how long your streams average, like my average streams typically around 4 hours or so. But so that's 8 o'clock to maybe 12 o'clock. Sometimes pushes past that to 1 or 2 in the morning, because you got to consider, right? I'm on East Coast time, so if I'm starting to stream at 8 o'clock, people are just getting off work on the West Coast time,
Yeah.
so they don't get online until midnight. So sometimes I get orders start coming in at midnight, and then you end up streaming later, and then I still have work next day, right? So it's a balanced game, but I think the motivation is to kind of as long as you kind of establish your goals for come from a business aspect of kind of what you want to accomplish, maybe targets you want to make. That's kind of an aspect that kind of helps you to gauge a little bit better. And so for some people, financially, it's a motivation. But for me, it's just kind of like I don't want to disappoint people, because every time I cancel a stream, people are like, oh man, I really want to rip some packs and want to just hang out with the gang, right? Because again, the community aspect is built off the stream, and each stream you don't have is an opportunity that people didn't get a chance to kind of hang out on stream. So that's another aspect of it as well. But it is a grind sometimes.
Yeah.
It is a grind, especially a long week.
That's something I was actually just recently I was trying to amend for myself, because I would love to go live every day. And I remember like 2 weeks ago I had made this schedule of like, because I have a gaming channel I've yet to do anything on that I'm still trying to get started. And I had made this schedule of like, I'm going to do this 4 days a week, and then this 3 days a week. And then I ended up having this whole like mental thing that I ended up being gone for like a week, and everyone understood and it was fine. But it's probably better to like you do, like pick 3 days that absolutely that you can be on, guaranteed no matter what. And then just put the option of like, hey, these other days are like bonus days. These are potential streams that could happen. That way you don't disappoint anybody, because you can only disappoint someone so much before they go, you know what?
Right.
See you later.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. Granted, that's probably going to be a sliver of the greater population, but still, that's audience you don't want to give up. Real quick story though, because you touched on the test taking thing.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't admit this, but I had no shame, and if I had a test that I knew I was bad at, I would find MacGyver ways to cheat. I don't know if you know, there's pens that had like that little window that would have like advertisements when you would click on them.
Oh yeah.
So I would go on like the top 5 or 10 questions I knew I was going to get wrong. I would go on a computer, type out all the answers, and I would shrink them down, and then I would wrap it around that, so that way I'd have all my answers on my pen.
There you go. That's
and then what was the other one? I think for English class, because I wasn't necessarily the best at spelling. Me and a buddy of mine, we were horrible. But there would always be a test where one of us always felt more confident. So whoever felt more confident would sit in the back, and we had this. It was so stupid. It was like a Morse code that we had where we would like literally tap on the guy's back. The number of taps was the letter, and we would just like tell them how to spell all the words. And then like we started just absolutely acing everything. And we almost got caught, but we were able to make it out of it. But it was pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, so the streaming thing, I never thought about it, but a lot of the people that I'd watched, I was always wondering like how they had so many people late at night. And it finally occurred to me that they're on the West Coast. And the East, so being on the East Coast or even Central Time is like, it's a little bit of a challenge, because if you're on at like 9 or 10, like I said, people are just getting off of work, and that could be a barrier. And as much as I don't mind staying up till 12 o'clock, not a lot of people in the card community necessarily stay up till 12, 1 o'clock. So what has been your ingredient on kind of finding the perfect, I mean, I'm sure some of it's just specific to you, but how you've found the perfect schedule so that way you do stick to it as close as you can?
Yeah, I think when especially for those who are thinking about doing this and when they're starting off, you kind of have to gauge what your busy days are, when's the not busy days. I think originally my schedule when I first started a year and a half ago was 4 days a week. It was like Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. I might have started out with 5 just to see how Saturdays were, but I would say needed time for family. So for me, I have less time now, so I have to kind of adjust it. But for me, a few aspects. One is how as you grow a business, as you get recurring customers, as you build a community, what days do people actually show up? Because certain days people may not want to come in. People are probably more happier to join a stream on Friday if they've maybe got their paycheck or whatever on the it's Friday, and those will be typically busy days, and weekends will be typically busy because people are kind of just hanging out, right? But sometimes Mondays or Tuesdays, at the beginning of the week, maybe not as much, right? There's a lot of things going on, and so for me, it was kind of gauging kind of how my streams, how many people were joining, and how we're performing from a sales perspective. That was one thing. And number two, I've also just asked people, especially if your community is big enough, you get a gauge of like how what people want. You can get better. Again, at the end of the day, you're a business, right? You kind of look at how you serve your customers. What's the best way to serve them? And when you sometimes you want to get them involved. I think some people forget that at the end of the day, you're not. While you do make the decisions, you can always ask your customers who will ultimately be there for you what they would like, right? And so I think a few times I've asked my customers kind of what days work best as well. And ultimately, I landed on kind of a midweek stream, a Wednesday stream, so they'll break from the work week just to get some rips in, right? And then the end of the day stream, end of the week, which is Friday stream, and then Sunday is kind of like okay, right before Monday comes, right? The kind of get some last rips in before Monday work week begins, and that seemingly works out well. But I know people who stream every single day. I've seen people stream every day, but and I think for someone who's new, it would be worthwhile to stream every day just to test out and see kind of what people you grab. Right, the more streams you do, the more visibility you have. But then once you kind of have that kind of numbers, maybe do it for like a month. It's gonna be a rough month, but it's gonna be a month of good data, and then
Yeah.
you kind of dive in and see what you want to cut down on. And so yeah, that's kind of how I approach that.
Yeah, I think that's something that I mean, even myself sometimes I don't even think about, but it's asking your community what they want is
Yeah,
such a thinking about it a brain dead thing that I don't think a lot of people think about. It's when you go ring shopping or when you go to propose to your wife or husband or
right,
whoever, a lot of times you go out to find out the type of ring that you're going to be putting on this person's finger forever, and you just
right,
don't do it willy nilly. You kind of get some information, figure it out, because ultimately, you said you're a business, you're there for them, and it's not about it's your stream and it's your business, but it's
right,
about them. So catering to
right,
them is important. The flip
right,
side to that is, with content, everyone's always got an opinion,
right,
and everyone always thinks they're right, and that you could be criticized either critically or laughably, horribly.
right,
Um,
right.
how do you figure out the line between what type of criticism and whatever that you get that you take to heart and
Right.
you work on, and the nonsense that is just complete filth that is just
Oh yeah,
volatile and shouldn't be looked
oh
at?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. The amount of times I get called a scalper is like crazy, and I think honestly anybody just nowadays gets called scalper very easily.
Yeah.
But I do not understand that's kind of just the current nature of just everything. Luckily, I would say this. I would say, luckily, I haven't had to face too much of that. I haven't had any huge criticism of anything I've done. I think I've always been kind of thoughtful in a sense of like um, thinking about what, like, every decision I make, I kind of think of like what potential outcomes there may be. And so not that I'm calculative at all, but like I don't think I have any drama going on, so to say, or enough things to make drama happen because it's just purely we keep it quite simple and lighthearted on my streams. But there are obviously people just that come on streams who are just either just you could tell they're just there to get emotion, get you riled up, right? And a good thing about streams, you have the power to just kick someone off, right, or things like that, because you can tell it's nonsense, right? But everybody who joins the streams, I always say hello to whoever the username is that pops up, and I say, "How's it going? How's your day?" And then you kind of get a gauge of kind of how that person is, and then if they're there just to rattle things up on purpose, then it's not worth the time and effort. So I just kind of let that go, let that go over my head, right? But lots of times, I think my streams have been pretty. I've been lucky, I would say. I've been pretty. It's been pretty chill. Like there hasn't been drama. I haven't been a part of Rattle's videos or any of those
Yeah.
like drama videos. It's been pretty like pretty chill of a stream. So that's at least kind of my experience there. But yeah, I don't really take everything to heart because I do understand it's the internet as well. You put yourself out there, so you kind of have to also have an expectation of what might come to play, and that's just part of the deal, so to say, putting yourself out there in the world of live streaming or YouTube or wherever it is, right?
Sure.
So
I know there's some personal taste to it, but that's why I've always kind of been more of a fan of the less performative channels and the more kind of authentic. When I come into you or TJ or who, actually just most of the people that I watch, of all the cardboard stuff is, I'm not a big fan of the performative stuff because I have to perform all GD day when I go to work. I just want to come. I want to hang out with someone who's authentic, and oftentimes, in my opinion and in my experience, authenticity breeds the things around that. Usually if you're authentic about who you are and you're upfront with issues that might come up, or if you miss someone's pack, if you're just upfront and say, hey, my bad, boom, and if they complain, you throw a little bit on top, everything's sweet. And oftentimes with other platforms, not to be mentioned, the minute something comes up, an order gets canceled, it's just this big whole to do. How do you handle that stuff? The customer service angle, the people who might not be upset, people who might try to scam you, where they maybe get a whole big break and then they have tracking and it gets shipped, and they say, "Hey, I didn't get this." How do you handle that with how big of an operation that you have?
One of the things I don't think people realize, and this is when I officially started a business. Again, I'm official. Like I have an LLC and everything, like official business. And you don't realize that as a seller how much scams there are on your end, like as not on the end of a seller, right? So I've had good amount of at least last year and this year, and we had definitely a few chargebacks. I've had a few chargebacks that has happened. Luckily, I've won majority of those chargebacks because good thing about like most streams, it's recorded, so you show that you've performed the service. So I have I sent basically for the way chargeback works for those who don't know. Like I use Wix. So people who shop, if I'm sure it's like the same thing. You get notified that you have a chargeback and you can dispute it. You have to fill out a form, tell your side of the story, send your tracking, all that stuff. But one thing that we have solid evidence is that a service has been provided, which is your rip has been ripped, and on my streams I have the queue with the person's name on it, so you can see it's all linked together. So there is video evidence of that happening. But one thing that does happen, because even though I'm a rip and ship, but I also do seal products, so people can purchase stuff from me sealed. And so there has been, I'd say, a handful of times where people have purchased something and then there's been charged back. But again, it's been not too crazy. Now I have ways to be able to kind of identify early on. One of the things you could see, especially on the back end of chart, on kind of potential scams that you'd be like, okay, this person's like not doing something right, is that you could look at the purchase history of a person and can see that they have credit cards declined, and then every single credit card declines a different credit card each time. Then that's throwing up red flags, right? But I remember the first time I ever got scammed was actually a local deal. So in the DC DMV area, which I'm at, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, people could purchase stuff on my shop and they could do a local pickup. And so this person gave me a story, which should have knew that. No, once I give you a story, it's like they were visiting relatives in the area, and they were looking so hard to find Pokemon. Came across the shop, and I wanna pick up these items. You got all these like Fusion Strike boxes or this other stuff, right? And so he got this order. He made one order. It's like Surging Sparks booster box at the time. It was like it's a few ETBs, and it was a good amount. It's like maybe $1,000 worth of stuff. And I met up with the person, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, I just need a driver license to verify the person that matches the name, and I'll be good, right? So this person shows up to my local pickup spot. We meet up in a public space, and that's typically how I do it. And they come to me, and I've been waiting there for like a good 30 minutes. This person had to take an Uber to meet up with me, which should have been a second red flag.
Yeah.
Again, remember, I just started this business like a month in or something like that. So I was very trusting of people. And so he shows up and he shows me, I was like, oh, I don't have my ID with me. He shows me his Apple something on his phone with the ID or something. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. So then next thing that happened is that a chargeback happened like 2 weeks later off the person. But I had an inkling something was wrong because the next day he put in another huge order for like at the time Fusion Strike and Evolving Skies boxes. And I was like, something is just not right. So I canceled the order. I made the excuse I couldn't meet up. And so luckily, but I did get that charge back I won that charge because I had evidence of the kind of the email, the chat that we had from the texting that we had go back and
Yeah.
forth, and it was very clear. Now looking back on it, I was like, oh, I was so dumb to believe this guy at the time. But but I feel like, but to grow as a business owner, to grow in this kind of hobby, you are sadly gonna have to go through that a few times to just learn how to deal with it. But nowadays, I kind of have my methods of kind of checking in advance or have a good gauge of like, if something's gonna go wrong. I think the worst is having people rip stuff at that, and or even potentially get a big hit on a rip
Yeah.
and then charge back on it, which again has not happened that often. Um, Maybe once of any of our streams. So, but it still is, that would have been a potential for someone else. So in general, I think regardless of where your background is, regardless kind of where your mindset is in whether it's the business of Pokemon or just TCG in general, I think everyone hates scammers, and everyone can agree scammers suck, and they definitely ruined the hobby in the whole completely unified. I think most people will agree way. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of that also has to, I think, goes back to the, being authentic and just really running a what's the word I'm looking for? Just like a straight and narrow business and shop, because the community you cultivate, the audience you cultivate,
Right.
I would argue severely reduces the risk of those types of things
Right.
happening. Not to say that they're
Right.
never going to happen, but if you curate an audience, it's going to probably be a lot less of a situation of that happening, or
Yeah.
at least less
Right.
less frequently.
Yeah.
One of the things I have been struggling with, because obviously I do want to start one at some point, is you have a lot of stuff to offer. You've got Pokemon, you've got Japanese, you've got I think you had Korean, maybe
Uh,
other
Chinese. I
games,
say Chinese.
Chinese,
Yeah. One Piece. Yeah. Yeah.
a lot. And
Yeah.
someone like me or out there who's just looking to start may be wondering, like, what is like the bare minimum? Because I mean, if I were to go in a grocery store and all they had was one singular egg and a rotten thing of broccoli on a shelf,
Right.
I'm turning around
Right.
and going out.
Right.
So for someone who's starting off, what do you think is the limit, or maybe the minimum mix of product or SKUs that you should have before you start a rip and ship?
Right.
Because if you're starting one, you want to take it seriously. You don't want to just try it out and
Oh
then
yeah.
you got,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No. That's a good point. I think. Well, there's a video you made about not just focusing on just like one product type. Well, I think a few weeks ago you made a video about that,
Yeah.
which I'll touch about. But I think in general, it really depends on kind of what your goals are. I feel like if you're, like you said, if you're really serious about it, then I say having a good 10 products could be a good start, just to get a good mix. Because I say 10 is a good mix because it's a good variety in the sense of like you have quite a bit of options, but it also gives you kind of a array of different products you could potentially bring in from different TCGs and not just like focus on one. But if you're only comfortable in, like, for example, if you're just only comfortable in Pokemon, then just do what you're comfortable in. If you're only comfortable in, like, if your background's only in Lorcana, for example, do you know how many people don't have Lorcana on their shop? There's a lot of people who don't have Lorcana, and Lorcana only recently went up in a huge boom because of the Buzz Lightyear iconic, which is now like $3,000, right?
It's a dope
But like,
card.
yeah, but my point is that I don't, to your kind of video you mentioned, is that don't focus on just necessarily the one the TCG that you're and you're comfortable with. You should expand beyond that a little bit, because there's other customer bases that you could kind of hone in on and see if you could potentially provide a service in that specific TCG. Now, the 10 products is a good amount because, like I said, you could mix up those. You could have like 5 Pokemon, three Locanas, or 2 One Piece products, right? It gives you kind of good range to play with. But for those who want to just try it out, you could just start with 1 or 2 products, maybe three products. For those who want to just like try out streaming and see if everyone wants to hop on a stream and rip some packs from you, just get 3 of the like more modern products. And just kind of rip it on stream and see kind of if you like it. Some people may think this rip and ship idea is such a great thing that, oh, I want to be part of it. But when they actually start doing it, and then see beyond the stream and all the work that goes into it, it may not be worthwhile investing into 10 different products. Maybe just 3 is enough. And you'd be like, okay, after a month of this, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then that way you don't have to commit too much, of your funds into something that you're not 100% sure of. And the way I like to think of it this way is like when I had my first kid, my son, I was thinking about, okay, I'm gonna be at home, so I won't be able to go out to the gym as much anymore. So I'm gonna buy all the equipment, the squat racks, the weights, and everything, and I'm gonna organize my own home gym, right? And so I bought the stuff, and next thing you know, it's been a year later, still collecting dust. Have not touched any of it, and I ended up giving it to my brother-in-law for him to use. So that same concept with rip and ships is that you really do want to kind of gauge if you like it or not. So I recommend this. If you're new, you want to try it out, just start 3 products, anything you can find. Just see if anybody want to just. And if you really want to practice streaming, you can use Whatnot. Again, requirements of going to Whatnot not that high. You could get in, sign on up, start streaming immediately, and you could just test it out, see if you like streaming, right? And just have those 3 products up, and see how it goes. But if you're liking it, then start expanding your inventory slowly. I think when I first started the shop, again, I had the seal collection to work with, but I had probably around maybe 20 products or so. Nothing too crazy. And I think right now I'm over 100 plus different products.
Yeah, there's a
on the shop.
lot.
So, it's again that burn and churn. You rip, you kind of. You can also get a gauge of your customer base. When I first started the shop, I had One Piece, I had Lorcana, I had Pokemon. Most of the business coming in was Pokemon. We had some people rip One Piece, some people rip. Not many people ripping Lorcana actually. So there was Lorcana had been sitting on my shelf for a long time before it started moving. And then over the course of the year, you start bringing new customers, and then your base started changing. It used to be like maybe 90% Pokemon, 7% One Piece, 3% Lorcana. Now it's more like the shop is more so like I would say 40% Pokemon, 40% One Piece, 20% Lorcana. And it's just, but it's really cool to see a shift. It's cool to see different people who are into Pokemon start ripping One Piece and enjoying One Piece and enjoy ripping it, And so it's a constant change. So going back to it's a long-winded version of the question, but it's the variety of products. For me, I always like to have variety. I hate seeing because I hate seeing a store just have a few products. That's just me. I just want to provide a lot of options for people so that you can have a buffet of things you can select from, right? So more modern, more older stuff, a good collection. And cool part again, for especially the older stuff, you can buy people's collection. Like I have a day in the life video coming out, but like 2 weeks ago, I picked up a huge collection worth my largest collection I ever picked up. To some people, this might be small, but it was like $20,000 worth of Pokemon products. Lots of Sword and Shield, some Sun and Moon, Scarlet and Violet stuff that I was out on the shop of. But these are stuff that are people like to rip. And again, it goes back to knowing your customers, knowing what type of products they rip. Collection boxes, people love ripping collection boxes. My top hit was the Latios tag team, Altart from Team Up. And that was ripped out of a collection box. And it was one of the biggest moments. But knowing that my community enjoy ripping collection boxes, that's why I got that box.
Yeah.
But if I didn't, then there would have been missed out on that Latios Altart. So but going back to asking your community, if you start building up your stream, building up the community, you can start asking them what kind of products they have. Now I have a whole kind of section in my Discord that asks for suggestions, things that the people want. Sometimes, again, these are suggestions, right? You don't have to bring on, because if there's not enough people wanting that product, it doesn't make sense for you to bring on like a whole case worth necessarily, because you're gonna just have that inventory that way. But use your audience as well, use your customers as a way to figure out what you should bring in. But that's kind of a way to build up your inventory over time. But yeah, starting off, 3 products just test out, 10 products in total, wherever it may be. It could be different booster packs, booster boxes, blister packs, things like that. Tins are really good as well. People like to collect tins as well, so that's part
Hmm.
of it. So those are pretty good. Sleeve packs are great too. So those are kind of the different product types. At least Pokemon wise, those are kind of a good selection, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're probably right. The three's probably the best, is a really good starting point. Not only because it's feasible, but it's one of those. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like if you keep waiting to think that you're gonna have enough product, you're gonna be waiting forever kind of scenario.
Yeah,
So it's like you
yeah,
can start with three, and then
oh yeah,
just kind of like we were talking about before, you start with three, you run the stream. If no one buys anything, fine. Then the next stream next week, maybe you have a fourth. You
yeah,
pick up
yeah.
a couple ETBs of this, then a fifth, and then a sixth. Then you get your
Right.
first, and you kind of slowly
Yep.
grow
Roll it
organically
in.
like
Yep.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, now you got my brain going. Like, okay,
Yeah,
this stop
yeah.
being a little bit of a
It's
nerd here,
fun
and
because what you start thinking about is that you start thinking things differently when you start looking at from a business standpoint. So, for example, you might get booster box, right? But from a rip bishop standpoint, you can sell it as a booster box. Someone wants to rip 36 packs, they could buy the whole box, right? They could rip it. But from a cost perspective, you could look at that booster box, wherever you paid, divide that by 36. Then you have a cost of per pack, and then you kind of see the margin between where market is on that pack. Divide that by 36, and a margin of the pack, and to kind of make that difference. So
sure,
you start looking at products differently because you start buying people's collection boxes, and instead of selling the collection box, you get you take the packs out and you sell packs because it might be worth more that way, right? It might make more sense to sell it as a pack versus collection as a collection box or a booster box. Like for example, like Obsidian Flames, like I think what 400 bucks, 500 bucks a box right now.
yeah,
Not everyone's gonna have that money, every week to spend 400 or 500 bucks. So it may not make sense to sell that as a box. It might make more sense to sell that as packs. But because you have a box, you could divide that whatever it costs to you, divide it out by 36, so that you have it by a pack cost. So there's different ways. I think that's one of the biggest things that I started noticing when I started doing this business was you look at products a little bit differently. You look at it as what makes most sense in how you sell the product.
sure,
Because if you sell it by packs, people are more likely going to be able to afford it. Like I have one piece products, EBO3, which is the heroin set, $300 a box. And everyone's going to want to buy a box. They want to rather pay a few bucks for a few packs, even though it's not necessarily too expensive from a box. So I'll rip a whole box open to get packs out of, so people can buy packs. So that way, again, you want to make sure you have a way to include everyone, right? If you make your products all too expensive, then you're not going to
yeah,
sell anything. No one's going to want to buy. But so again, it's meant to be this convenience thing where people can come here, they can buy a pack here and there, they have an option. It doesn't always have to be. You see a lot of streamers do huge rips, 100 pack rip, check it out, But reality is most people are doing a pack, 5 packs, 10 packs maybe, or kind of your average sizes. And of course, if it's a good payday or a tax return, they spend more, right? But
yeah,
again,
yeah.
having that variety in the pack format is probably better than having like just expensive box, right? Because people like to have those expensive booster boxes, but they may not move for you because not everyone's gonna have 400 or 500 bucks to spend every week. I just collect a booster box. Some people also won't want to rip it; they want to keep it sealed. So there's other aspects of it that you want to kind of think
Yeah.
through on that piece of it. Yeah.
I've almost thought about. I mean, whether it's a good idea or not, who knows? Because like obviously, the worst thing that's going to happen in this business, you lose money. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I've almost thought about starting and just like treat it. I don't want to say like a loss leader, but like even if I just started at breaking even, just to do the motion.
Yes.
But and especially with having other stuff in the bulk thing, it's like if I'm doing this as a
Yeah.
break even, just to have people come and then check out my store, like you're right.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways that you can piece things together, and I think that's it's funny because it's like it's a double-edged sword. It's like it's nerve-wracking on one hand to like take chances and stuff and figure stuff out, but on the other, that's why you go into business for yourself, to be able to make these changes, these choices, and then you get to figure it out from there. So it's like fun, but it's also like, oh, what's
Yeah.
what's
But
gonna
you know what?
happen?
That's a great point to bring up because there have been many times I've sold product at my cost. but just so I can have product on the store that I know people can afford, that people want to rip.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't have distribution. I have to find secondary markets to find products, and sometimes I don't get the best price, but I also want the latest products as well. So there's been, I'm trying to think of a good example of a time. There's been like few products where I just had to sell it at cost because it was just one. It didn't make sense to charge them more because I know it doesn't. It's gonna be way above market, and like at that point, like once people start saying Mike's charging, $5 above market, right? Doesn't even
Yeah.
though that would be my gross profit margins I want to be at, it ruins kind of the vibes, right?
Sure.
Again, not charity, but at the same time, I don't want to make myself like known to be out like $5 above market something. So sometimes there have been times where I've just like dollar cost average, just like how people do stocks. You keep buying product. If you have so much product that you bought in the beginning where it's super expensive, and things get cheaper, you buy more of it. I think in the beginning, like Ascend the Heroes was like that for me a little bit. I think I was selling them more so. I think they were primarily the ETBs. They were really hard to find or source like a sealed case of, because you're paying premium on cases of stuff. And typically for my shop, I try to buy cases of things because I know nobody's tampered with anything, with any of the boxer. It's all coming in the sealed case. So, but over time, I've bought more and more ETBs so that ultimately the dollar cost average comes down so that now I do have a margin that I could work with. But just to have product on the shop, I want to make sure, regardless of the cost, even if it's going to cost me money or even if I lose money, I've done it a few times where I had to do that just so I can have product that people can rip. Because I want to be known as, oh, Mike has OP17 is coming out. Mike, are you gonna have a boost box? Yeah, I'll have a boost box. I got an order from Taiwan coming in, but I got it.
Yep.
I might not make money on it, but we're gonna rip it on stream though. We're gonna have the auction for you guys. So that's what like OP17 is a huge thing that coming out next month, or in the coming months, and it's hard to find any of it, and that is one of the products that I'm sourcing in that I know I'm not going to make money on, but I know I'll at least get people the opportunity to rip it on stream.
Gotta have it.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
So what does MIkeXCollectibles have on target for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? I know I've got my own kind of path and trajectory, and I think whether you're doing bulk or ripping ships or whatever aspect, you want to have goals, you want to have things to aspire for. I know my big goal is in hopefully less, but in 2 years' time, I would like to have $50,000 to $100,000 saved so I can really just take that shot. Right. What's on deck for you in the next 6 to 18 months?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things now is that the ripping ship, and I think Carmine, for you, a lot of the aspects of kind of from our conversation is the bulk side, right? Because ripping ships just generate so much bulk, and I've accumulated so much bulk. I've been watching your content because I've been trying to get into some of the bulk side, but obviously just trying to find time for it is tough. But one of the other things that comes out bulk and just buying collection things is a lot of single cards.
Yeah.
So I have tons of singles that are just sitting here that they're like behind you on the computer right now. And so one of the things that recently actually I applied for eBay Live. And so on eBay Live, it's a little bit different than Whatnot. There's a whole process. You have to get accepted. So it's a little bit more of a different vibe than Whatnot. But what I do plan on actually doing is for single cards to actually do on eBay Live. So actually have a way to do it that way versus like go on Tcgplayer. I don't know. Maybe you could give me a recommendation if that makes more sense. But eBay Live at least is more so like live auctioning. Again, still kind of live streaming aspect, but just selling singles through there because I've been trying to figure out driving traffic to whether or not I want to do a singles portion of my shop, but just keeping up with the prices on my website is just so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not easy to kind of maintain. So kind of that's one money that's just been held up. So singles selling on eBay Live, MIkeXCollectibles on eBay is kind of my upcoming project in the upcoming months. But that's obviously, again, I'm still going to try to stream my 3 times a week, Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays for my regular ripping ship. and then try to figure out, just like kind of restarting over again in a whole new environment. Try and start trying to live streaming on eBay for selling all my singles that I
Sure.
have. I think outside of that, I'm trying to also get more engagement within the local community. Last year, I did a local scavenger hunt for fun, which basically I had like packs of like Pokemon, and I filmed myself putting somewhere locally around the area.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and people just go, and I'll be like watching from a distance and watching people run and chase it. But it's kind of a way to kind of market the local community for the shop. But it's just like a few packs, right? Just put it out there. So I do want to start that back up again because that's been something that people have been enjoying locally, but also go a way to drive the local business side of it. So I'm trying to expand my customer audience more. I think the hardest part about Rip and Ship is getting new customers in on live stream. Again, with YouTube and stuff, the algorithm may not necessarily push, so you had to find other ways to kind of drive more people, more new eyes to the shop. So there's that aspect too as well. Expand the local side, and then trying to get new customers through there. So other than that, that's probably the next 6 months. And just also surviving, just
Simply surviving.
Yeah, simply surviving everything else as well on top. So
one thing I've learned, especially getting into the eBay of things, is not to worry about the pricing too much. It's hard for me to do, but especially with eBay, if you put up an illustration rare that you got for $2 and it's a $7 card, and then it sells, and let's say it goes up $5 and someone gets a deal, it's ultimately knowing that you put it up and you had your margin in place when you sold it. Yeah, you missed out on some bucks, but you still made your money. So that's might be something that you have to at least start thinking about when it comes to the singles things, because I think putting singles in your shop is going to be a good move. But it's definitely it's a mind game that you're going to have to because I know I still do it. I'll have some cards that'll sell, and it's like, oh, those all sold at once. Let's go see what happened. And it's they're all like $3 more a piece, and it's like, but I know I got them for a penny, and I got my money, so it's okay. So I know we're getting.
Happens. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you finish.
No, I was gonna say that happens a lot on the shop. Yeah. Sometimes you see all of a sudden a sale of multiple ETBs. I'm like, oh, this went up overnight, and I lost out.
Red alert! Ding ding! Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's again part of it, but you as long as you put in those margins in before you put submit the prices or place the prices, set the prices early on, you should still be good.
Yeah, you can try as hard as you want, but you're never going to get every penny out of everything.
Right.
So
yeah.
We're pretty much getting to the end of it. I appreciate you again for hanging out. Usually at the end, I always like to give the opportunity if there was anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about, or if you had any random question you wanted to ask me for some reason before I let you rip it one more time.
Yeah, no, I kind of want to get a gauge of your. I'm always curious about kind of people's business strategies, and so with your bulk, it's kind of like bulk is a tough thing, not just because it's a volume game, but you probably have so much competition for the same card, right?
Yeah.
So what's kind of your strategy when it comes to, how do you get someone to buy your card versus someone else's card? You know what I mean, from a perspective of your listings.
Yeah.
Do you do anything extra on top of that? When you do like your shipping side, do you have more? Do you have any sort of like personalized letter to get people to come back to shopping with you? How do you maintain that customer retention? And what's the thoughts on there? Yeah.
So for me at least, I mean a lot of people would agree with this, but for bulk, it's like Rip and Ship. It's variety. If someone comes in and I just have Scarlet Violet base, I'm probably not gonna get a whole lot. So ideally, it's you have your you don't have to necessarily have like the $100 cards, but if you have your $1 to $10 cards, or at least some of them there, someone buys it, and then I look at bulk as like the chewing gum and the candy on the side. So if someone comes in and gets that $10 card they know, and they go, oh, this guy's got 80,000 cards. I've got some master sets I'm working on. Let me see if he's got this. That's why, I started, I'm slowly kind of getting back to like the whole listing everything mantra, but within like a reason. So I just hit 80,000 again. And I'm going to go as far as I can, but the amount of orders I've gotten where it's like 200-300 cards and it's literally just an entire master set, or I just broke down all those Marvel beginner boxes, and the amount of people who have ordered one of every superhero possible, it's hard to say no to that. Yes, it's a little more work, and yes, maybe it might be a little less money, but when you get known to be the guy that's got
Right.
everything and you can be relied on to have everything at all times, it carves out a little niche, so that you become a little unique in that sense. I do a personalized thank you on every single order I send out, and the day I have my business, I'm going to tell them that that's a requirement. It seems silly, but like the number of times I get a feedback and it's like, oh man, this guy really took the time to put a personalized note on there. It doesn't seem like it's a lot, but to the average buyer who's used to just getting their thing chucked in a box, and it just gives like the extra inkling that some actual effort went into packing my stuff. But it's overall, the bulk thing is a base. I'm trying to build the biggest base possible so I can do other stuff. So I've got, I got a few PC ETBs here. I got all my master set binders where if I have to dig into them, I can dig into them. I've got I have 4 perfect order ETBs and Ascended Heroes booster bundle that's just kind of sitting there that I'm either going to hold on to for a while, or that might be the beginning of my rip and ship. Who knows? But it's finding the delicate balance between reinvesting in the business to build the warehouse single side, but also taking some of that profit and A, applying it to the leveraging I've been doing, and then B, setting it aside for what may come down the road. But it's a hard balance, especially when I don't have tens of thousands of dollars. I have $2,000, and it's hard, but it's fun. And I know in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months time, I'll be able to get to look back on now. And I'm sure you do the same, when you started a year, 2 years ago, with where you started and where your inventory is. And honestly, I would love to hear your opinion on it before we go, but that's the pipe dream that keeps me going. Every time I see someone like you or all these people that, are farther than me or optically farther than me in money they spend or inventory, I don't usually I try not to look at it as darn it, like they're luckier than me. It's like, okay, these guys obviously did something great. I want to chase that, and I use that as a benchmark to look for.
Yeah. No, can I just say? I just want to say this. I watched your videos are just so authentic in the sense of like the true, like you talk about the true grind and the tough moments that we have. And I think the recent video you had was about not comparing yourself to others. It was like the other day, and I still do. You would think that because I look at other people who have like hundreds or thousands of people who are on their live streams watching, right? And it's just always this thing, and I think it's just human nature. You always compare yourself to, you're always wanting more, right? You're always wanting to kind of be at a level that you see someone else achieving that you want to be at, and so it's this constant chase, or this constant like nonstop like chase of wanting to be at this next level. And it's a tough grind, and sometimes you do have to take a step back. I think your video you mentioned, and you guys just kind of takes a step back and appreciate what you got, and just realize how far you've come on the journey. And I've been watching your stuff since episode 1 of these streams, of these podcasts, and it's just seeing how far you've grown. It's just it's a story in itself, right? And I think watching your stuff, usually it's late at night when I'm doing shipping or something like that. I'm watching your kind of these true conversations, just honest conversations about and a nice reminder that just keep up with the grind. It'll pay off. And don't compare yourself too hard. And I think having that genuine take from you is what keeps someone like me going, because I do need a reminder from time to time as well. Because it's tough. It can be a very lonely journey, especially if you're like by yourself doing it. No, I don't have a partner. Like I don't have a partner working on this business. I have my wife, and then she takes care of kids, which is great, and I'm very, very lucky to have her. But the business in itself is a long, exhausting journey, and especially if you're operating by yourself, it is lonely at times to try and figure things out yourself. So having folks like you, talk about these things, I think is a nice, just driving factor for me, and a nice reminder. So I do want to say, and I appreciate the content you make, because when you talk about stuff you talk about, it's like, yeah, I know how that feels.
No, I appreciate that, man. I very much appreciate the kind words. It's you're right. It's just, whenever you get to feeling a certain way, you have to just remind yourself that there's other people that are feeling the same way, and it is what it is. I did read somewhere though that babies are really good at ripping packs. So maybe you get this kid in here and start having them earn their keep, and then you'll have a little less work or something.
I know. Well, my 3-year-old comes around and actually collects. Because actually, all my packs, I actually keep all the packs I kind of rip on stream. So I actually hoard all these. And it's funny because like one of my videos I made is like dumping out all the packs. And last year we ripped over 73,000 packs, which is just crazy insane just to think about. But I think most people don't realize like how much you rip on a rip and ship. And I'm not saying also these are just, again, booster boxes and stuff, so it's a good amount of packs. But I've been collecting this because I've been thinking of the update video, which is dumping off this year's packs out as well. But my son is good at picking up those. He does that a bit, and my baby loves to just bend all the energy cards.
Hey, sounds like they have excellent roles.
Yeah, I would say energy cards are great at teaching kids colors, though. You know those the energy packs from the ETBs. It's a good way to teach colors.
That's a good idea. I'll have to keep that in mind if I ever have a kid.
Well,
before we let you go, if you want to remind everybody one more time where to find you on your selling platforms and content and all that stuff, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, no. So, Carmine, thank you so much for having me join today. Again, I'm Mike. I own and operate MIkeXCollectibles, which is my online TCG store and rip and ship. You guys can find me on YouTube and Twitch. Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then in the near future, also MIkeXCollectibles on eBay Live as well for single cards. So we'll see how that goes. That's a new venture for me. So,
man. Again, appreciate it very much for stopping by. That was Sunday Morning Conversation. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you the next one. Have a good one. Bye.
Peace.